Hey everyone, in the previous video we started to create our first race as well as our classes. So we have the human race and we have our priest, sorcerer, summoner and warrior classes. But even if we can, for example, go in game and create a human sorcerer, we can't do anything because we don't have any items, we don't have abilities, we don't have skills and stuff like that. So that's what we will be starting to do on this video. In this video I'm going to be focusing on the sorcerer class, but in the future one we will of course create all the classes. So we will be focusing on the combat part of the sorcerer right now, which is, effects, abilities, and before getting into that, we actually could, create some specific stats for the sorcerer, or not specific to this class, but to your game design in general. In this case, I want the sorcerer to have a fireball abilities as well as other fire abilities, and in this case I think it would be nice if it's not only dealing magical damage but also fire damage, meaning that later in the game we could maybe unlock some equipment or armors, weapons that gives us fire damage bonus, as well as we could encounter some bosses or enemies which have some fire resistance as a stat on them, meaning that it's harder for us to kill them because we use fire, stuff like that. So to do that, very easy, you can create any damage type you want and resistance type you want extra without having to code anything. For this, you first have to go to settings, combat, and add new stat functions. In this case, we'll be adding 3 new stat functions. The first one is going to be fire damage. The second one is going to be fire resistance. And the third one is going to be fire penetration. That's it. That's all you have to do. We now save it. We go to combat, stats, and we will start creating our new stats. So I'm going to be creating the fire damage stats. And I'm not gonna go ahead and assign all those values yet. You will understand why in a bit. So I'm just gonna quickly create those 3 stats. So fire resistance, save it, and the fire penetration one. I want it to be all cap. And save that. So now we have our stat list here. We can, for example, filter them by the name. So we have fire damage here, and we will be starting to create the stats. I'm actually going to start with the fire resistance, and you will understand why in a bit. So the fire resistance is going to be of type resistance, of course. This is not optional. Like if you want a specific stat to be used as resistance in the damage calculation, you have to assign the resistance type to it. For the category, it's going to be in defense, but this is not relevant to this video. I'm going to be explaining that in future videos. So the function is going to be one of the few we just created, which is of course the one fire resistance in this case. And the opposite stat in this case, it doesn't need to be assigned. Now if we go to damage, we assign damage type to it because we want this stat to be increasing a damage type. We're going to assign it to magical, and the function is going to be fire damage. And now this is where it gets interesting. The opposite stat, you see that because we created a fire resistance stat of type resistance, if we now have a damage stat selected, we can now select another resistance type, and in this case we have the fire damage stat, so of course we will select the fire resistance, meaning that when you deal fire damage, the fire resistance of your target is going to be taken in consideration and reduce your fire damage. So we'll be saving that. And for the fire penetration one, we will select penetration as type, of course, and fire penetration as function. And the opposite stat is also going to be fire resistance, because in this case it's not going to be reducing the damage, it's going to be neglecting some of this resistance. So that's it. That's all the custom stats we needed for this video, and we can now go ahead and start creating our effects. So I'm going to start with the fireball damage, and I'm going to call it fireball damage 1. The reason I set 1 is because I want this ability to have a few ranks, and I'm not going to assign an icon to it because this effect is never going to be visible in the UI, so we don't care about an icon. it's going to be of type magical damage, meaning that any stat with the stat function magical is going to increase the damage. But on top of that, because we just created a elemental type of damage, we are going to select fire damage, which means that now every time we have something increasing our fire damage stats, the fireball damage is going to take advantage of that and have its damage increased. The base value is going to be 50, and that's it. We can just save that. So like I said, for the fireball ability, I'm going to have a few ranks, and I'm going to have 3 ranks more exactly. So I'm going to duplicate the fireball damage and call it fireball damage 2, and this one is going to do 60 damage instead, and just save that. Duplicate again and call it fireball damage 3, and this one is going to do 70. Nothing too crazy, it's just to have some kind of upgrade. Now we will create a fire rain damage, and we will not have ranks for this one. I'm just going to keep it simple to make it quicker for this video. And the base damage is going to be about 10, because this is going to be a huge AoE, so we don't want to hit as hard as a solo target. So that's it. We have our few effects created, and we can now use them in abilities. So let's create the fireball ability first. In this case, it's going to be seen in the UI, of course, so we select an icon. This means if we want this ability to be known by default by the character. It is not the case. I want this to be learned in the talent tree. So I'm going to leave this off, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new rank. So abilities, if you're not familiar with them, they can have as many ranks as you want. But we will start, of course, by rank 1, and we will make it cost 1 to unlock. So this 1 means that when we learn it in the talent tree, it's going to cost 1 point. I want this ability to be 0.8 second to cast and 0.8 second as stun time. The ability type is going to be projectile. As you see, we have many different ability type with all their own values and settings, but in this video I'm not going to cover them all. I'm definitely going to cover them all over time, but for now we will cover ground abilities and projectiles. Anyway, the fireball is going to go at a speed of 50, range of 40. It's going to shoot only 1 projectile, it's not going to have any delay, and it's going to hit only 1 enemy maximum. Meaning that as soon as the fireball hits an enemy, it's going to get destroyed. It's not going to go through enemies. The cooldown is going to be 2 seconds, and it's going to trigger 1 effect. It's going to trigger the fireball damage 1. For the visual part of this ability, I'm going to use some predefined one. I'm not going to show how to create those in this video. It's going to be covered in other videos. There is actually already a video on that on this channel. So now we have assigned the fireball animation and the fireball projectile, and that's it. We can reduce this rank 1 and add a new rank. You see that here when we create a new rank, so for example rank 2, you see that all the values are default and empty, and it's kind of boring because we would have to go ahead and reassign all those things and remember them. So I made this copy above button, and you see when I click it, it's actually copying every single value above this rank. So in this case, we can just simply tweak only the fields that we want to tweak. In this case, it's going to be 2 projectiles instead of 1. They are going to have a delay of 0.15 seconds. And instead of the fireball damage 1 effect, it's going to trigger the fireball damage 2. So it's dealing a bit more damage. We can now create the rank 3, copy above, and make it 3 projectiles with a little less delay, and trigger the 3rd fireball damage. That's it. That's all we need to know and do for this ability. We can just hit save now. It's going to save all those settings, and we'll be creating our fire rain ability now. So fire, this icon, and this one only has 1 rank. It's also going to cost 1. It has no cast time, and it's going to be a ground ability because this is something we will cast on the ground. So the hit layer is going to be enemy mob, radius is going to be 5, range is going to be 12, no delay. It's going to hit 8 times. It's going to hit every 1 second, So it's basically going to last 8 seconds and hit every 1 second, and it's going to hit maximum 10 units at once. The cooldown is going to be 10 seconds. It's not really balanced, it should be a bit longer, but it's okay for this video. And it's going to trigger one effect on it. In this case, it's fire rain damage. And we need the fire rain combat visual here. So we can save that. I just want to check something if I forgot to do it or not. No, it seems fine. I selected the right layer for hit layers. So very easy now. We need a way for us to learn those abilities, because if we now create a character, for example, human, sorcerer, and go in game, we have no way to learn those abilities. They need to be in a talent tree or something, right? So for this, we need a 3 points. I predefine one here, which is sorcerer points. So you see it's, called sorcerer. It is starting at 5, and it is well, let's actually make a new one together to make sure you understand how this works. I'm just going to call this sorcerer. Sorcerer. It's going to be the same as this one above, but we create it together. And it's going to start at 10 points. And very important, it's going to have a gain requirement. In this case, we will not bother with the rest of this list, but as you see, you have quite a few options. But in this case, it's going to be increased by 1 every time the sorcerer class gain a level. So if we are level 1 and we get level 2 with sorcerer, we will now get 1 extra sorcerer points. Simple as that. So we save it, and we now have the sorcerer points. So very simple, and now we have this sorcerer tree. I'm actually going to delete this one and start fresh. So let's make a sorcerer talent tree. And use the mage icon. For the 3 points, it's going to be using sorcerer points. So this is a point type we just created, meaning that in this talent tree, you will be spending those type of points. It's going to have 5 tiers. I'm not going to be explaining tiers and stuff like that in this video because it's covered in others. What matters is that we'll be adding nodes in this tree, and those nodes can be learned and upgraded and have requirements between them and so on. As you can see, a node can be an ability, a crafting recipe, a resource node, a bonus, and stuff like that. So in this case, we will of course just use abilities because we just created 2. The first node is going to be the fireball. It's going to be on the first tier and at the middle of the tree. And here we will select the fire rain. Fire rain is going to be on the second tier, so a bit above the fireball in the tree and on the left. And very important, it's of course not needed or required, but in this video I want to show you the ability requirements. So in this case, we will not be able to learn the fire rain ability unless we already know the fireball one. So simply by adding this requirement here in the talent tree, you will not be able to learn fire rain before fireball. If we now hit save, we have this new talent tree, which is, the sorcerer one. And the last thing we need to do to be able to use it is go to the class section and add the sorcerer tree here. So all the way below, you have those talent trees. You can just assign the talent tree you created and save. And that's it. So if we now go ahead, go in game, create a new character, and say, call it sorcerer video, for example. Select human and sorcerer, Go ahead and go in game. Now I'm going to go full screen. You see that if we go to the talent section of the character page, we have the sorcerer tree that we just created. And if we click on it, we have indeed our 10 points, which is this point here. So you see that it's starting at 10. So we do indeed have 10. And we have the fireball ability and the fire rain. And you see that we have this line here saying that the fire rain ability needs the fireball to be known. So if I try now to learn the fire rain, it's going to tell us the ability fireball needs to be known. So we can't learn this. We also can't drag them on the action bar because they are not learned yet. So if I go ahead and spend 1 point on this fireball ability here, I can now drag and drop it and use it on this dummy target. So pretty cool. Because of this video, it was a bit longer than if you would, go and create your own abilities and stuff, because I have to explain at the same time. But I think it's pretty quick, as you could see, to create effect, stats, and abilities. And now we are in game and we use an ability we just created and we actually do damage to this dummy target. So if we go back to the talent tree now, I want to level up my fireball to rank 2 and use it. And you see that now it is shooting those 2 projectiles. So it's one after the other. So we now upgraded this ability. Let's upgrade it one more time. And now it should be 3 projectile. So pretty cool. And you see that we have some critical hits sometimes. This is because we added agility to the sorcerer class. And agility is giving crit chance. So pretty cool. And we'll now be learning the Fire Rain ability and using it. So that's it. That's what we just created. It works perfectly. I think it was quick enough, to show you an example of what is possible and how easily you can tweak it. And now I'm going to quickly go here, go to the rank 3 of the fireball and show you how quickly we could iterate on that. So let's say that now we would want to be a bit crazy and say that fireball is now 10 fireballs instead of 3, and it's going to be an angle spread of 40, and that's it. I'm going to go ahead, save that. And you see that now it's a completely different ability, right? It's now a con. So we didn't leave play mode. We just opened the editor, tweaked the settings, saved again, went back in play mode, and now, went back in the game and see the change in real time. So this is super quick to iterate. And if you're like, okay, I don't like this too much, maybe this goes a little too fast, maybe it should be half the speed, you can just save again, go here and see how it looks. I don't think it's very good like this. I think it was better before, but it's just to show you an example of how easy it is to tweak your settings and stuff like that. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. In the next one, we will probably be creating either more abilities or maybe we start working on some items. See you in the next video.